As those folks that are watching by way of internet, we'd like to welcome them also. If this is your first time visiting us, please come back again. I see a lot of new faces out there, and I'm sure it's because of, Sean and Rick over here getting sworn in. There'll probably be this many people come whenever I retire, probably. I didn't see that many when I got sworn in, is what I'm saying, Oh, thank you all again. We'll look at the calendar, and the calendar, the only thing we have is our next meeting coming up, the March 25th town council meeting. It'll be at our regular time. Public comment. Yeah, we have no public comment tonight. That's great. So we'll move on. Additions or deletions to the agenda. Are there any deletions or additions?
No, sir.
Okay, I'd ask for a motion they be approved.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Got a motion, second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, show like sign. Okay,
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
okay, we got a motion to approve the consent agenda,
Second.
second by Chuck, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, show like sign.
Thank you. That was an honor to do that 2 years in a row. Thank you.
Okay. We move on to, getting ahead of myself here. Right here. Tonight, we got some presentations here of, some new folks moving up in recognition of Chief Chris Mahaffey. You want to take that away?
Yeah, let me start out. This is just a fantastic night because we're honoring two fantastic people that have been with the organization for a long time. And we were practicing staff meeting all day, calling Chief Mahaffey, just to make sure that we got it right. He's touchy about his name. What I'd like to do to honor Chief Mahaffey is to ask former Chief Webb and Chief Mahaffey's wife and family to come up and do the honors. I tell you, the services really know how to do this. None of us have any brass or any patches or any badges, and whenever there's something like that, there's a lot of envy involved. So once again, let's just watch the chief be sworn in, not sworn in, but we're gonna put the brass on him.
It's quite an honor to have the opportunity to work with the town of Waynesville. During my tenure, promoting Chris to assistant chief, he's done an excellent job. I'm so happy that he was able to come through 47 candidates, come out on top, which I knew would. Yeah. Congratulations, Chief, and Chief. It's an honor to have you take over the box.
We want to hear him scream.
There'll be plenty of time to tear that badge off his chest.
He's got his eyes closed. I paid him extra to do that.
Works pretty cheap.
Yeah.
Had to let them all do something or it wouldn't be fair.
You're just fortunate you didn't have 3 children, or you really would be in trouble. Chief Mahaffey.
Glad you're official now. Okay. And it's also an honor. Chief Webb has done a remarkable job as the chief. What, 17 years? Is that correct?
16.
Yeah, I know they was somewhere in that neighborhood. Has done a remarkable job of training Chris to be in this position here, and I feel great that Chris will do a good job for Waynesville. So Waynesville's in very, very good hands. We'll move along. We got second one coming up, a recognition of Sean Messer's promotion, and Chief Adams will do the honor of that.
Congratulations to Chris as well, fellow Army veteran, so proud of you. Mr. Mayor and Council, thank you for tonight, letting us do this. It's an honor to introduce Sean Messer. He's been in the police department almost 20 years. Outstanding man. He cares about the police department and the community. And again, it's an honor to recognize him, to promote him to lieutenant tonight. He has his family with him. Sean's involved with a lot of things in the community. He helps out with the DWI task force. Also helps with our motorcycle program also. So we give a Bible, law enforcement officer's Bible for each promotion. So I'll give that to Sean tonight, and also I'll swear him in as a new lieutenant. I know he's looking forward to this, and I know he'll do a good job. Just raise your left hand. Put your left hand on the Bible. Raise your right for me. Just repeat after me. I, Sean Jeffrey Messer, do solemnly swear that I will be alert and vigilant to enforce the criminal laws of this state.
Sean Jeffrey Messer, I do solemnly swear that I will be alert and vigilant to enforce the criminal laws of this state.
That I will not be influenced in any matter on account of personal bias or prejudice.
Sorry, I lost my place. That I will not be influenced by in any other matter or account for personal bias or prejudice.
That I will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States.
That I will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States.
And the Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith.
And the Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith.
And I will faithfully and impartially discharge and execute the duties of my office.
And I will faithfully and impartially discharge and execute the duties of my office.
As a law enforcement officer, according to the best of my skill, abilities, and judgment, so help me God.
As a law enforcement officer, according to the best of my skills, ability, and judgment, so help me God.
Thank you. Welcome,
Sir. Just thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council.
Thank you.
You have it, Chris.
I expect that will cool the room down quite a bit.
Probably, I've been burning up.
I know,
Yeah, you're right.
Virgin.
She looks
You're burning up.
relaxed. I know, I told him that. It's very. While they're leaving, I'd like to take the opportunity to wish Julia a happy birthday on Thursday.
Happy birthday, my dear. Happy birthday, bud. I wish you.
Yes,
We share a birthday.
This
Yes.
Thursday.
Wow.
Yep.
yes, we share a birthday. If I forget that when I'm up.
We can close the damn.
Yeah,
I
You and
know.
Andrew's on the same day, right?
yeah, we're both Thursday.
Sorry. I didn't
We'll
say
have a
that.
parade.
We're bad luck babies.
Where?
That's right.
March the 13th.
That's right.
Bad luck
She sure
babies.
is.
Bad luck.
Yeah, sure is.
Yeah, it would be something if
Comes in
a person named Julia was born on the Ides
He's
of
great.
March.
Daryl
I
Mann,
am Irish, you know.
he reminds us why they retired. Let's see. She's at the Main Street Convention. We had to have two staff members attend and several workers, so people from second staff.
Yeah, it feels awkward not having someone sit there. Yeah.
Well, we have a recording that if, because it won't be long before they'll allow electronic vote.
So you just feed it into AI and let it take notes.
Yeah. Yeah, she just pressed the button and just converts it to minutes.
Yeah. Scarily accurate. Just,
Don't say that.
Irish, we're the long range.
looks like it's
It does, yeah.
we're the same.
No, it doesn't look sad.
She can spot.
I fed all of my writings, so I say during my voice, people can read it.
Okay, guys, we'll we will resume, and we got another presentation by four stewards on their activities in our watershed. It'll be Dr. Peter Bates.
We always look forward to this.
Oh, yeah.
We sure do.
This is the second time in a row I've cleared the room, so
We do that on purpose.
not sure why I schedule something very popular before me and then. Anyway, I'm always glad to be here. Good to see you all. Guess I'm not sure for getting the presentation up, but yeah, we'd like to give you a brief overview of some of the things that we've been doing in the watershed during the past year. I think I've talked to you several times recently about things that we're doing, so I'll just give you kind of a brief update of that. But as I get into this, I'll show you Jerry Miller here will do the bulk of this presentation. So just to kind of start off, just reminding you of our team, myself and Jerry Miller, who's here, Matt Vaughn, who's our staff member at Western, Sonny Himes, who's our naturalist, does a lot of our non-native invasive plant work, and we do a lot of that in the watershed. And then the many student interns from WCU that work on the property, and we thank you so much for giving them that opportunity to get that good experiential learning experience. So just what I'm going to do today is I'm going to give you a very brief update on the forest management treatments that we've been doing. One exciting new update that is something finally coming to fruition. But then I want to turn it over to Jerry Miller, who's, I'll introduce him a little bit more, but who has done a lot of work with water quality throughout the region and is also looking at the effects of Helene both in the watershed and really in the region. And I think you'd be very interested to hear more about that this time. So again, just the standard introduction, watershed's about 8,600 acres, was put into an easement. Most of it, everything except the blue area there was put into a conservation easement in 2006, if I can read that. That easement is co-held by two conservation groups. One is the Conservation Trust for North Carolina, located in Raleigh. The other is the Southern Appalachians Highlands Conservancy, located out of Asheville. And they are the entities that are responsible for ensuring that anything we do in there is consistent with the objectives of the conservation easement. So I always want to make that clear, is that we have our ideas and we make plans, but they have to approve those plans. And so again, emphasizing why that conservation easement was put on that property. The principal goal of that easement is to maintain the high quality water resources that property holds. And everybody recognizes that's number one. But there are secondary objectives, and one of the secondary objectives is to establish and maintain a healthy and a productive forest. And the reason for that is having that forest is, again, primarily to minimize negative impacts to water quality, although there are other objectives as well related to wildlife habitat, conservation values, scenic values from the parkway, education, and really it was not taken off the table that the town could generate revenue from the forest and the property. So our stewardship strategy is to maintain a diversity of naturally occurring forest communities. So when we talk about how are we going to steward the forest inside the watershed to best protect water quality, well, a healthy, diverse forest has been documented over and over to be the best land cover that you can have for a municipal watershed or any watershed where you're interested in water quality. And maximizing forest diversity really enhances the resistance and the resilience of that forest to various threats that might come, various man-made threats, non-man-made threats, things like that. So that's what we try to do. So in terms of what we are doing actively and spend a lot of time on in the last year, one is we monitor and control a lot of non-native invasive plants. That's a major effort of ours is to go in and look at non-native invasive plants and treat them where we can. And then we also implement treatments on the forest itself that will increase the diversity of those naturally occurring forest types. So just to briefly summarize, we began our aggressive non-native invasive plant treatments back in 2015. That was the year after we did some thinning in the white pine plantations that were located around the reservoir. And after that thinning, it was important for us to get back in there and watch those non-native invasive plants because we were opening up those stands a little bit, more light was getting to the ground. And so we wanted to make sure we were monitoring and treating non-native invasive plants. So we have these units, if you can see the map, 5 non-native invasive plant management units that we've outlined, and we treat those and investigate those almost every year. We also drive and walk all the roads that we can. And so this is kind of giving you an idea of where we focus our treatments. And, we don't have great data, so I can't quantify our effectiveness, but just anecdotally, because we treat them every year and see how many there are, we're very confident that we're having a really significant impact on the population. So we feel real proud about that. In terms of next year, again, we're just going to continue same old, go in there, survey areas that we are proposing to treat. So that's one of the big things we do if we're going to propose a treatment and we have a fire plan, a prescribed burn plan. We want to get in there ahead of the burn, look for non-native invasive plants, treat them before the burn, and then do follow-up monitoring after the fact. Where we have other proposed treatments, that's the same strategy. Just go in ahead of time, survey and treat. That's a good preventative measure. But then one thing we'd like to do is to explore the efficiency of some non-herbicide treatments in areas that are close to water. So the conservation easement and just best practices say that we should not be using herbicides close to the reservoir or close to other water. So unfortunately, those are the areas that have some of the highest concentrations of non-native invasive plants in the watershed. So, our crews go out there and they're treating multiflora rose, and then they get to that 300-foot line by the reservoir and they just see this wall of multiflora rose, but we say, nope, stop. And so it's kind of discouraging, and also it's just a nuisance because those are just flowering and seeding and they're just spreading things right back into the watershed. So we'd like to propose some non-herbicide techniques that we might be able to use, work with the easement holders to see if we can see if they would be effective in terms of trying to knock back some of those non-natives that are in those areas that we can't treat. So that's monitor and control non-native invasive plants. And the other one is active treatment, is to actually treat the forest, treat the trees to increase the diversity of naturally occurring forest communities. Again, just to give you the rationale behind that, this little diagram schematic kind of looking at one forest type. Historically, if you had a montane oak hickory, which is a very common forest stand type in the southern Alps, you would have that cover type, but it would have a lot of different age classes, different species composition. So you'd have little pockets of that cover type, that oak hickory forest, that were very different from each other. And those differences were created by natural disturbances that occurred. It might be fire, it might be wind, weather-related ice storms, and we had that diversity. Well, the logging, industrial logging and timber harvesting and timber mining, whatever you want to call it, that happened from the late 1800s through to the early 1900s, where we just came through and cut down everything, massive timber exploitation. But we essentially homogenized that forest, because all of a sudden we had one big disturbance at the same time that covered everything. So now we have a very uniform forest coming back. So we have that, all those little boxes on the left, and now we have one box that represents, kind of a more homogenized current condition. So our approach here is to take that current forest condition and then implement treatments at various places so that that current forest condition will start to spread out and diverge. So we'll have more diverse conditions in the future. Again, getting back to that resistance and resilience to threats. So that's a big picture. We don't ever pretend that we'll be able to match the amount of diversity that we had historically, but we think we can get better than we are now. So just quickly, we have examples of some of the stewardship treatments, and I will just say it's not on here. The biggest treatment is to do nothing. We're perfectly fine with letting forests develop as they are. So that's, that's a very common treatment. But then in places where we do actively treat, we do basically thinning treatments to go in and either treat the thin trees in the overstory or trees in the understory, and those have different objectives that I won't get into now, but that increases the diversity and the structure of those forests. And then the other one, and the last one I'll talk about, is to introduce prescribed fire to enhance fire-adapted species and also to manage fuels. And we've been talking about this for a number of years, and I'm very excited that we do have a burn plan. The North Carolina Forest Service is in charge of this. They have laid out a 135-acre burn unit. We are going through the approval process with the easement holders. There's a northern water shrew that's adjacent to this that they want to make sure that we're not influencing the habitat for that shrew. But otherwise, we're very hopeful that if the stars align, we'll get that done in the next few weeks. We'd like to get it done this prescribed burn season, which probably ends in mid-April sometime. So keeping our fingers crossed. I will note on that map, if you see it, we do have that star represents a water quality monitoring station, one of Jerry's stations that probably one of the oldest ones that's been in there. So we have, we have years of baseline water quality data, so we can be looking at whether or not the burn influences things at all. So I'd much rather talk to you about this in the watershed. So as you know, you're all invited anytime. Just give me a call. We'll go up and we can look at this and talk about it in more detail. Other people as well, because that's in the woods is where you want to be. So what I want to Helene and water quality and kind of pass it on to Jerry. Some pictures I took of culverts washed out and landslides in the watershed. So Helene, many areas are still suffering the impacts, of course, but we did not escape them either. So I'll turn it over to Jerry and let him talk about some of his observations in the watershed and some of the other work he does with water quality.
So I would like to organize a group to take a tour of the watershed again. It's fantastic. Yes. Because that's the only time you can actually go in the watershed.
Well,
It's a pleasure to be here this evening and kind of extend the talk that Pete started and look at some of the water quality aspects of the watershed. What I'm going to do is kind of give you an overview of what we've been doing, a little bit about Helene, and then kind of broaden it out a little bit and look at some of the water quality, particularly with regards to plastic pollution in the greater Waynesville area. So as Pete mentioned, we've been looking at water quality within the watershed since 2007. At some point or other, we've had 8 different monitoring stations set up. So we have a pretty good understanding of the water quality throughout the basin. At each of these stations, we've had different types of instruments installed. The pressure transducer down there, that's just kind of a fancy name for a recorder that will measure water level fluctuations. We can convert that into stream flow, so we can record how water is changing. We do this because water quality changes during flood events and during different flow conditions. The sondes, these are called multi-element sondes. They have different probes that are in the water, and we can measure a variety of things on almost a continuous basis. So we collect data every 5 minutes. We do turbidity, which is kind of a measure of clarity, which is an indicator of the amount of sediment in the water. We can do temperature, we can do pH, specific conductance, which is an indicator of dissolved constituents. And so it's a variety of things that we can get on a very tight time scale. And then the other main device you'll see there is an ISCO automated sampler. These we can program to collect water samples when we're not up in the basin. We actually can connect it to one of those pressure transducers, and what happens is as water levels start to go up, it'll start collecting samples in a uniform time increment. And then when water levels drop, it'll stop. So we can get samples during the entire rising and falling stages of that flood. It allows us to collect essentially 24 samples at a time. So we get a lot of samples out there. Most of these samples have been analyzed for suspended sediment concentration. So it's a more direct way of kind of analyzing the amount of sediment in the water at any time. Now, currently, we're measuring water quality at just 2 sites. The OB1 there refers to Old Bald 1. That is the site that's located immediately downstream of that area it's going to be burned that Pete talked about. We have collected data there since 2008. So we have a very long-term record of water quality at that particular location. The other one is Lower Allen Creek. And this is downstream of a treatment that's already taken place. It was put in, I believe in 2010 or 2014 maybe. But it was trying to look and see if there's any impact on those treatments that occurred. And as we'll see, there really was not. We can say with some level of confidence that this is probably the most intensively monitored watershed in this part of the state. We collect so many samples over such a long period of time throughout the basin. I'm put this slide in here just for reference to give you an idea of what the water looks like when we're talking about turbidity or suspended sediment concentrations are measured in milligrams per liter. So in particular, I want you to notice that at 20 NTUs, that's turbidity unit, or 40 milligrams per liter, the water is still amazingly clear. Now, when we get to 75 NTU or about 100 milligrams, you start to see some discoloration, and then it kind of deteriorates from there. If you look at the water, I don't want to get in the weeds too much. I just kind of threw some data in here to kind of remind myself. But what we found is that over 90% of our samples that have been collected, and at this point we're looking at hundreds of samples, we have concentrations that are less than 10 milligrams per liter. So that's incredibly clear, pristine water. We're very lucky to have that kind of good water within the watershed. So that's at Old Bald 1, but we could look at that throughout almost all the monitoring sites. We would see the same thing. We're just very fortunate to have such clean drinking water within the basin. Now, we did have Hurricane Helene, as everybody's aware of. NOAA has suggested that over a 3-day period, we were looking at somewhere between a 1 in 500, maybe a 1 in 1,000 year event. So this was a very obviously abnormal event. But we had some monitoring equipment up in the watershed, Old Bald, at the beginning of that storm. The blue line you're looking at in the lower left-hand figure, that's the change in flow or discharge in the site. You can see it raised at the highest discharge we've ever measured in the basin. We were only able to capture samples and flow conditions during the first probably 40% of that flood. The last part of that flood, our stakes that were in the stream to hold our tubes and stuff in just got ripped out. It was literally moving boulders that were probably 2.5, 3 feet in diameter. Our stakes were actually pounded into bedrock, and it just ripped them right out of the channel bed. So it was moving some incredible size materials. The other graphs here are just simply to say that for most of the event, concentrations were actually pretty low and consistent, but then we did get some values up towards 1,000. We had an outlier of 3,400 milligrams per liter, so very atypical for this particular site. And we think that was related to these short pulses of sediment from debris flows and landslides that got in the stream system. It has, after the event though, it went back to normal. So that's a good thing to see that water quality kind of cleaned itself up at this particular site fairly rapidly. Okay, if we go down to the lower Allen Creek site, as I mentioned, this was a site we were monitoring to see what the treatments are. We collected here mainly turbidity. It's a kind of a secluded site. It's hard to get water samples in and out of. So we were using those multi-element sondes to collect the turbidity data. But what it was telling us is there was no difference, no statistical difference between pre and post treatment. So we were in good shape there. We're not seeing any kind of degradation.
I believe the treatment was the white pine thinning.
That's right.
So in 2014, when the logging was happening, and that's what we're talking about. So we were monitoring water quality in the harvest unit before, during, and after.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification, Pete. This site also got affected by Helene fairly significantly. So we're looking at turbidity here. During the actual flood, you see the turbidity values kind of go up there. They kind of parallel what was going on with water. So as water levels rose, turbidity went up and then kind of decreased there. But at the very end of this flood, you can see that the probe got buried. Now, it was actually located in a pool that was about 4 to 5 feet deep, and that entire pool filled in. And when we got out there and actually started looking, what we found is that there had been some debris flows, some landslides in Shining Creek there. The sediment was transported downstream all the way to the lower part of Allen Branch, where the reservoir was located. And so the next slide is kind of a blow up of the lower part of Allen Branch there. And have to be subjected to my artwork, but the lower diagram there in blue is kind of showing the topography if we went across the valley floor. And what you see is the main channel of Allen Branch, and then a couple of smaller tributary channels that come in and drain into the reservoir as well. Now, as that debris flow and sediment worked its way downstream, it created a log jam, probably about maybe 200 or 300 yards upstream of the reservoir. This was not uncommon for streams in this area, especially headwater streams. And as that log jam developed, sediment started backing up behind it. You kind of see it there with the yellow material. And then as the sediment filled, the whole channel was filling up with sediment. It forced water over that little divide. Water spilled into the adjacent channel, and then it kind of cut that divide out. It eroded it out. And so what we saw here was a sequence of kind of sedimentation deposition in the channel bed, and then it eroded all the way back through that. This was not a small amount of sediment. So what we're looking at here, the light colored sediments along the channel margins, that was all deposited during Helene. And, sorry. Essentially, when it filled up, the channel bottom would have been at the top of those light colored sediments. So we probably got, 3-4 feet of fill. And then as it spilled over and cut down into the adjacent channel, it cut back through all of that material, got back to close to what the original channel bed was. But all of that sediment went into the reservoir. So it was a tremendous amount of sediment that was flushed in from those landslides into the reservoir itself. Probably more sediment that's gone into the reservoir than the past multiple decades combined. Okay, so I want to switch gears here just a little bit and talk about some of the work we've been doing on plastic pollution, in particular microplastics, kind of within the Richland Creek, Waynesville area in general. This is work that we've conducted with Haywood Waterways Association as well as Pascola High School. What I'd like to focus on for the next few minutes here are microplastics. These are small pieces of plastics that are less than about 5 millimeters in size, so about the size of an ant, and then it goes down to about the size of bacteria there, and smaller plastics called nanoplastics. These plastics are derived from a variety of different sources. A lot of our clothes are made out of nylon, polyester, things like that. So that's considered a microplastic, usually a fiber. They also come from the breakdown of tires on roads, as well as a variety of other plastic objects that we use on a regular basis. Now, the potential reason we're studying microplastics and the concern that's come up recently is that they could have an impact on biota within the environment. So they might have ecological impacts. Those impacts are both physical. So in this slide, you can see larger pieces of plastic debris are ingested by organisms. It can clog their airways. It can clog their intestinal tracts, might cause damage to the linings of those tracts, and stress out the organism, can lead to death. And chemically, there's usually 3 ways that they could affect biota. The first is that the plastic polymer themselves, a variety of different types of polymers that are used, most of those are inert. They're not a problem, but some, like polyvinyl chlorine, PVC, is a toxic substance in the right quantities and conditions. Probably more problematic is there are a variety of additives which are put into these plastics to give them the characteristics that they're known for or that they want. So these are things like colorants, maybe plasticizers that kind of control its flexibility, its strength, its melting point. They may have stabilizers in there to keep them from deteriorating and so forth. The point here is that those additives, we know some of those are potentially toxic. And then the third thing is that the plastics themselves actually have a small electrical charge on the surface, and they will attract other types of contaminants like lead, mercury, PCBs, those kinds of things to the surface, and they actually act as kind of vectors or carriers of these other types of pollutants. So if those particles are ingested and those chemicals come out of those particles, they can potentially have an impact. There's been a lot of work done over the last decade on this. It's a very difficult thing to work out because the plastics are so variable in their composition, the additives that we put in are so variable, and then all the stuff that might be attached to it is variable. So it's something that's extremely hard to get a handle on in terms of their actual impacts. As a result of that, they're commonly considered at the moment a contaminant of emerging concern. So it just means we think there might be an issue, but we really don't know. At this point, what the research community is really trying to do is try to quantify how much is in the water and where it's coming from, just to kind of get some ballpark figures of where it's at. Okay, I should mention that microplastics seem to be ubiquitous. Everywhere we've looked for them, we found them. Whether it's Mount Everest, Mariana Trench, snow and ice in the Arctic and Antarctic, we find it. So we're looking here at Richland Creek Basin. We've been collecting samples at 8 different locations that you see there. One of those is in the watershed. The reason we selected it is kind of our control site with regards to human activity. Restricted basin, hardly anything done there. 90% of the basin upstream of that monitoring site is forested. So it gives us really good idea. And then we can sample upstream of the town of Waynesville and all the way through the town of Waynesville. Now, the concentrations that we're finding on average is about 9.7 particles per liter, or you can think of it as about 20 per 2-liter bottle. That doesn't sound like much, but that's actually a lot. If we look at global values that have been reported, it's in the upper 25% of all values that have been reported at this time. Pretty big surprise given that we're pretty undeveloped and we're a headwater basin. Most of these are fibers, over 90% are fibers like you'd find in clothing, and they tend to be dark colored. Now, as a hydrologist, what we like to do is look at how fast things are moving downstream. So if we take the general flow conditions within Richland Creek, this happens to be near the Waynesville Skate Park, and then combine that with our average concentrations, what we find is there's about 14,000 particles per second moving past that cross-section in the stream. If you look at it on a day, it's about 1.2 particle or billion particles per day, but it adds up pretty quickly. Don't want to spend a lot of time here. I'm kind of going on. I just wanted to mention here what these graphs are trying to show is that as we go from upstream to downstream through the town of Waynesville, concentrations of microplastics do increase. This has been found in most urbanized areas, as you would expect. A lot of that's coming off of road dust, coming in from storm drains, a whole variety of things. So nothing unusual here. The one exception is within our Waynesville watershed. It's that sampling site to the far left of those diagrams, and the concentrations were surprisingly high, in spite of the fact we don't have much human activity in there. Now, what we speculated is that some of this is coming in from the atmosphere. There's been a lot of studies done in urban areas, not so much in rural areas, where we've seen a lot of particles being deposited essentially across the landscape. So we put in 3 atmospheric samplers. One was at Highlands Biological Station. The other was at Coweta Hydrological Station, which is now near Franklin, and then we had one at Iron Duff. And what these samplers do is it allows us to collect particles during dry conditions as well as during wet conditions when it's raining. Essentially, it shows us that the highest concentrations occur during rainfall. That's what we expected. We're essentially washing those particles out of the air. The highest elevation areas, in this case Highlands, had the highest depositional rates. More rainfall, more deposition. And that we had a lot of particles falling down. So it averaged between 100 and about 180 particles per square meter per day. So you can think of the dust you see on your car and stuff like that. There's a lot of plastic in that. To give you an idea what happened during Helene, at Highlands Biological Station, we almost had 3,000 particles deposited per day. So it's an enormous amount of plastic. At Iron Duff, it was around 700 particles per square meter per day. So during Helene, it was orders of magnitude higher in terms of depositional rate. Most of these particles, if we look at their composition, are composed of nylon, polyamides, and PMT, which is essentially polyester. So what we're seeing is that most of this is from textiles. And then those particles could be brought in from long distances. It doesn't necessarily have to be the immediate area. They can be brought in from quite a ways away. Okay, If we look at the concentrations in the water, we got the same trends. The concentrations of microplastics during Helene were about the same as what we saw in the floods prior to Helene, or even base flow conditions for Helene. So not a whole lot of difference there, but what we did find is that because there's so much more water flowing through the thing, our loads, the number of particles passing a point in the channel, just skyrocketed. So here at the Waynesville skate park, we went from about 1 billion, 1.2 billion particles per day to 161 billion particles per day. Pigeon River at Canton, we had back kind of rough calculations about 1.9 trillion particles per day. So there's a lot of this stuff just kind of floating around in the atmosphere. Last couple of things I'll mention here just real quickly. We are looking at microplastics in the sediments as well. Our values are again kind of high globally. They're ranging somewhere around about 250 up to 1,000 particles per kilogram, or for about 2.5 pounds. You can see there that one bar on the far right-hand side, that's where Richland Creek is getting ready to enter into Lake Junaluska. Water slows down. It's a depositional environment, so a lot of those plastics are being deposited on the stream bed. Now, one of the reasons that we're looking at plastics in the sediments is that they can be accumulated by some of the smaller insects and vertebrates that live in the stream bed. We've been looking at one in particular, caddisflies. If you fly fish, you'll recognize this, but they make a little casing or nest at the bottom of a rock. They live inside of that. Casing's made out of sediments. You can see the larva in the upper right-hand corner there. And then these guys are eaten by fish, by the trout. So it's an avenue to go from the sediments into the caddisfly larva, and then particularly into trout. So it's moving up the food chain. What we found here is that both the larva and the caddisflies have quite a few microplastics in them. Casings a little bit more, between about 1 and 4. That's more than we expect, just based on the concentrations in the sediments itself. And what we believe is happening right now is that these caddisflies preferentially collect the plastics because of their bright colors, and then they incorporate that into the nest. We've seen that to be true for fish and other things as well. And so with that, I think it just well, they never shut me up, right? So obviously, when you went out right after Helene, tremendous amount of plastic everywhere. Say a little picture there on the far right was Lake Junaluska. We could even map out high water marks based on the extent of plastic which is floating on the surface. So what we're currently doing now is going into these flood deposits you see here throughout the upper Pigeon River Basin. And then we're characterizing the microplastics in these various types of flood deposits to see how much is there. And we're also looking at some other contaminants. So there, I'll stop.
So the watershed we're clean at the surface, but not down below. Is that the bottom line on this?
The water's,
The watershed the water is clear. That's what Dr. Bates just said.
yes,
Everything's great up there, but then you're talking about this stuff after the flood.
yeah.
Okay.
And
So it's much lower than our watershed.
yes. And I'd also mention that the water during Helene got a little kind of dirtier than we've ever seen, but it cleaned itself back up. So, it was temporarily kind of dirty during Helene, lots of sediment moving. Now it's clean. You're right. The water in the watershed itself, fantastic. As you go down into the actual drainage, it's not so much.
What about the microplastics in the watershed?
So there are high concentrations in the water in the microplastics.
That's kind of everywhere.
It's everywhere. Yeah.
So is the clarity of the reservoir itself comparable to the clarity of your testing sites?
I'm sorry.
Is the clarity of the reservoir itself comparable to the clarity of your testing sites as you move up the watershed?
We have not directly measured the
Okay.
reservoir, but based on what the water treatment plant sees, yes.
Have you continued to study forever chemicals in the area?
We have not.
I have a question. Is there a short-term or long-term effect because of all the sediment that was deposited in the reservoir?
I don't think there will be. I think most of that sediment was sand-sized, particles are larger. So when they went into the reservoir, they were probably deposited right along the edge or the boundary of the water there. Even though it was a fair amount of sediment from Helene that went in there, the reservoir is so deep and so big, I don't think it's gonna have a significant effect or really a measurable effect on the capacity of the reservoir. That's the way to check
We
that is
fared
actually do
much
some
better
measurement.
than Asheville with turbidity.
Pardon?
We fared much better than Asheville with turbidity.
Yeah, absolutely.
John, you have any questions? Anyone else? Okay, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
We've enjoyed y'all coming and catching us back up on our pristine watershed. We are very, very fortunate. Okay, we move on. We have a public hearing tonight. And so I'll ask for a motion that we,
Mayor, I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
that's what I was gonna, I need a second.
Second.
Second by Julia. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, show like sign. Mr. Alex.
All right. Good evening, council. Thank you. Before you tonight is a request for a contiguous annexation at the address of 64 Clement Drive, Waynesville, North Carolina, 28786, PIN number 8616908565. The town received the attached petition for annexation of 64 Clement Drive on February 6th, 2025. The property is within Waynesville's ETJ and is zoned Raccoon Creek Neighborhood Residential Mixed Use Overlay. The property is not within the 100-year floodplain. Notices for this were published in the Mountaineer newspaper on February 26th and March 5th, and 3 signs were posted on the property on February 27th, 2025. Before you is the ordinance to adopt this resolution, and myself and the applicant are here to answer any questions you might have.
Anyone have any questions for Alex? Okay, I will open it up to the public. Anyone would like to speak in favor of this annexation or not in favor of this annexation, raise your hand.
That's the property owner.
Would you like to speak, honey? Those are the kind of people we love. You're fine. You're fine, man. No problem. Okay, then I'll ask for a motion that we close public hearing.
So
Correct?
moved.
Got a motion by Julia,
Second.
second by Chuck. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so like sign. Okay, we're looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt the attached ordinance to approve the annexation of the described properties in number 8616908565.
Okay, got a motion?
Second.
Second by Chuck. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so like sign. Welcome to Waynesville.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's the easiest one.
Thanks, Alex. Good job.
That has got to be a record. I think just your application just was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And
Yes.
again, welcome. Okay, we'll move right along. We've got new business. We've got approval of our personnel policy. Paige, would you please, you're already there.
I'm here. Nice to see y'all this evening. So I'm gonna put this to you all.
Oh, did you turn us off from public?
Okay.
Do y'all want the long version or the short version?
Short.
All right, you got it. And so tonight I want to bring to you all a new personnel policy presentation. A little background on this is well, the purpose of this presentation is to introduce you to the proposed policy. I hope you all had some time to read over it since Candace sent it out last week. It's important to update personnel policies frequently for several reasons. Legal standards change, best practices change, and we also need to constantly audit our policies to address existing gaps and inefficiencies in our processes. So that being said, the background of the current personnel policy, it was developed, I believe, in 2017 or 2018. When I started working for the town in 2023, Mr. Heights asked me to make drafting a new personnel policy a priority for the HR department. So I began my research by observing what policies made sense, what was working, and what was outdated and inefficient. I conducted numerous stay interviews. I spoke to department heads frequently. I took consideration from feedback from the UNC School of Government Employee Survey and those structured feedback groups and focus groups. I had numerous meetings with leadership, and we researched best practices from other municipalities and professional HR associations and organizations to inform the updated policies that you're reading this evening. Some of the recurring themes that I observed and noted when developing this policy was that the current policy is silent in so many areas that impact this organization. Topics like discrimination and belonging, work-life balance, career development, and new federal employment laws like the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act and the Pump Act. My goal was to make this policy user-friendly and legally up-to-date. We needed a change. I believe that our employee survey and focus groups really helped us understand that our employees needed us to pay attention to industry shifts, morale, cultural changes within the organization. And so my hope is that we have addressed these things. I'm not naive enough to believe that we have captured everything. And that is why I believe that personnel policies are living. They're living documents. They need to be updated constantly. So this is just the beginning. If we come back a year or 2 years from now and compare what we have in place with what I'm proposing today, it will very likely look different, but it should.
Right.
And that means we're doing our job. The most consistent feedback that I received from staff was about their dissatisfaction with vacation, bereavement, and longevity. And so those are 3 things that I have addressed in this new policy, along with new federal employment laws, provisions, and requirements. I've also created a clear hierarchy within the new policy that allows issues to be resolved at the division and department level as much as possible. That frees up administrative time so that we can do very important work. Lastly, the proposed policy will no longer obligate the town to provide post-retirement health insurance benefits to employees who are hired after March 30th of this year, if you all agree. In Article 1, General Provisions, I have included hyperlinks in the digital copy so that staff can have access to Fair Labor Standards Act, Family Medical Leave Act, Department of Labor, and other websites that will help them make better decisions for themselves and their families. I've created a glossary with more accurate definitions that we use in the policy, clear organizational structure and chain of command, and accountability of key leadership. The position classification plan gives us guidance on how to reclassify positions as needed and request new positions as needed. The pay plan helps us to keep up to date with market labor costs. We've added a trainee designation provision, and we've provided up-to-date guidance and provisions for promotions, demotions, transfers, and reclassifications. Recruitment and employment, we have clarified legal requirements for EEO, and we are consistently applying the recruitment procedures outlined in the policy. These are a repeat from the current one. So what you'll see is that some of the language did not need to be updated. So we will continue to use that. In conditions of employment, we have clearly outlined our expectations of prohibition of workplace harassment and workplace violence. We've explained what discrimination is, what harassment is, and what sexual harassment is. We've drafted a section prohibiting consensual romantic and sexual relationships between employees and supervisors. We've offered clarity on expectations for performance evaluations, attendance, professionalism. We've created a playbook for training and advanced certification within this new policy. We've added updates to the career track program, and we've also taken the events of Hurricane Helene into consideration in our more robust adverse weather policy. Records and reports, no significant changes were needed here. The language is informed by state statute in this section, and so it's going to be pretty duplicative of the current policy. Separation and reinstatement. We didn't have clear direction on what happens when employees exhaust their paid and unpaid leave. So we've talked about that in the new policy. We've included a severance policy for certain employees, and we've discussed the continuation of benefit through COBRA whenever employment is terminated. We've expanded definitions and examples of unsatisfactory job performance and improper personal conduct. We've included lists that are not exhaustive, but give examples to help supervisors when they are trying to conduct discipline. We have a commitment to progressive discipline here, and that is outlined in the new policy as well. And we've given staff instructions for appealing demotions and dismissals in the new policy. We've crafted a new grievance policy with helpful guidance on the goals and procedures to assist employees, department heads, and the town manager's office to remedy grievances swiftly and comprehensively. We've expanded FMLA guidance. Something that I'm really excited about is the new vacation accrual schedule to match market demands. What I am proposing is that we match the state of North Carolina in those vacation accruals. I'm proposing a kinder bereavement policy that acknowledges the need for staff to travel long distances to attend memorial services, and additions of federal requirements for lactation and breastfeeding breaks, and reasonable accommodations for pregnant workers. Our benefits have not really changed, other than the discontinuation of health insurance benefits for retirees, for employees hired after March 30th of this year. Employees will be required to pay their employee portions of the town's group insurance policies during approved unpaid leaves of absences, including FMLA going forward, which is more fiscally responsible. The last piece is an appendix which lists all of the available certifications that we are hoping that our employees will seek out, and a more fiscally responsible travel policy. I want to thank you all for allowing me to present this to y'all tonight, and I'm hoping that you all have questions that I can answer for you, and I'll just turn it over to y'all.
Okay, Anthony, you have any
Yeah.
questions?
I want to thank you for all the hard work you did for this.
Thank you.
Plus, all the department heads gave glowing recommendations and they felt heard and they had input into this whole process. So thank you very much for that. And I want to thank all the department heads as well, because you were very much involved in this. And I really appreciate all the hard work and the additions. Thank you.
Thank you.
John?
So no questions. You answered them all.
Okay.
As I just want to say bravo. Job well done. This, looking this over, it's God love you for doing what you do.
There's a reason it took 18 months, John.
Yeah. So, job well done. Thank you.
Appreciate
Chuck, you have any questions?
No questions. I'm just really happy that you brought all policies from all departments together in one place. I mean, so it's all in one place. And one of the best things that Rob Heights has done was hiring you. I got that.
Thanks.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Yeah, Paige, the only thing I will say is, I appreciate the tremendous amount of work, because I've worked on all these policies over the years, but thank you for your hard work. Not only you're protecting our employees, which are so important. They are the lifeline. They are the town of Waynesville. They keep us going and keep all of our citizens where we need to be and happy and everything. But then you're also protecting the town. So it's multifold. It support our employees, but also support our citizens and protect the town. So incredible work. Absolutely incredible.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, again, thank you so much. And I know you've got police chiefs stamp on this. And I appreciate you going to each department head the way you did and questioning. I think on the long run, this is going to be one of the things that solves, the morale problem.
I hope it's a step forward.
I feel like this is a step forward in that direction to do that. And so I thank you very, very much. And again, Rob, you've done a great job on hiring.
She's
And
magnificent.
also thank Brittany back there. Brittany is behind the scenes of making employees happy when they have receptions, when they retire, whatever. She goes out of her way.
I couldn't do the work I do without.
Yeah, Brittany, I want to thank you too, Brittany, for everything and putting up with me when I come in to see you there. But again, thank you so much. And folks, we need a motion.
I move that we approve the revised Town of Waynesville personnel policy.
Okay, got a motion
Second.
by Chuck, second by Julia. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, show like sign, so ordered. Thank you again so much. You've done a brilliant job.
Is, are those policies, I know you said they're working, and I think, from minority views, they want to know that this is and how it is policy environments. Ultimately, policies that your employee affects, the way that team, how high. So I just want to ask, are you, I guess, is it how consistent in the items are not really changed or what are there initially were is that offered also people that are sex stuff. They're the same etc. Despite pressure from outside forces, are those things when that pressure comes in, or are those I think they're great. Sorry. And so our goal here is to always find our problem. No matter who is in front, who is in front, who is in front. The only time that we change policy is if we're federally specific. Because we are a part of it. But every change we make, because we all live, they have to. I can't just go to there is and I appreciate that. I want to be able to that back. Any other questions? I don't know about this. No, I don't.
She's done.
Yeah, that's enough.
Yeah.
All right, we better move
The
forward.
whole
Still got
policy
some
is
stuff to
posted
do
as
here.
well, so.
We got a next order of business here is a possible adoption of a resolution in support of House Bill 24, a bill to strike that section of the session law 2024-57, which restricts a local government's authority to amend density or allow allowable uses within their jurisdiction, and that will be Elizabeth Teague will explain that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Whoa, that was obvious.
As the mayor just read, our state legislature adopted some session law, which was under the umbrella of storm recovery. And attached and made part of that law was a section that severely limited local government's authority in terms of downzoning or creating new zoning rules that might restrict certain uses. In fact, the legislation said that no local government would have the authority to initiate a downzoning process to reduce density or to reduce, quote, the permitted uses of the land that are specified in a zoning ordinance or land development regulations to fewer uses than are allowed under the previous usage. And so what this means is the local governments, town of Waynesville, couldn't initiate a rezoning of any area. And even though we try to include public input in any rezoning process, and we have to follow notification, it wouldn't even allow us to sort of initiate the question. So that severely restricts what we might be able to do. John and I have been working as part of a subcommittee along with Anthony to look at recommendations of the comprehensive plan, which included, among other things, an examination of certain areas in town where people felt were zoned too intensely, or a higher level of density that may have been appropriate for the slope or the river valley. And now we can't bring a lot of those recommendations forward because of this rule. Interestingly enough, we're not alone, and you'll see in your application that as of right now, 29 counties and 12 specific municipalities have filed for exemption from the provisions of this law. What's before you is a resolution in support of House Bill 24, which is a bill that would apply across the state of North Carolina to strike that section of the session law and just take it out of the legislation. Town of Maggie Valley just adopted a similar resolution at their last. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I can tell you I was at the state dinner a couple of weeks ago, and this was a heavy topic with municipalities with their state legislators. And there was actually a little roundtable on this very subject. There is a clear divide in the House on this bill, as you can imagine. The say political parties. There's one party that is strongly in favor of keeping the bill as it is, and the other party that is not. Unfortunately, the party that is in the majority wants to keep this bill, and they indicated that they will fight over this bill. That being said, I think that we need to support House Bill 24 because it's taken away our ability at the municipality level. The comments were that you should leave local zoning to local government, which I agree with. Yeah, and those decisions, because we know what our constituents want and our individuals in our municipality, not someone from the coast telling us what to do in the mountains.
Exactly right.
John,
you have any questions?
It's been, a real treat, honestly, as we work through this process. And, this has been going on for how long, Elizabeth? So,
Well, since the adoption of the comprehensive plan.
yeah.
we're trying to work on how do we implement what public told us they wanted their way.
That's exactly right. The public told us this is what they want. They wanted us to take a look at density levels that are allowed. And so what we on this subcommittee did is we took a look at how we might implement some changes while balancing the impacts both on property owners as well as the public and their needs as well. And we had crafted what I believe was an outstanding way forward in terms of balancing those needs of the various constituencies. And then at the 11th hour, literally the 11th hour, we were ready to bring this to the planning board.
Yeah, we wanted to do some public workshops around
It was page 131 of the Helene recovery bill, just so you
Yes,
know
it's
that. It was the
stuck
very
in at the
last
end.
page.
had nothing to do with the issue at hand. And the rug got pulled out from under us.
Yeah.
And so we were responding to what our constituencies asked for. And some folks down in Raleigh decided that we don't have that ability anymore. And so I could not be any more strongly in favor of adopting this resolution. And it really is imperative. And I'm sad to hear Anthony's report because
It was shocking.
we had a great plan in place. And so I'm let's see where this goes, but I'm ready to stand on a table if I need to in support of this.
Thanks, John. Do you need?
Right, I'm on that table with John.
I'm fine too, and the existing law has some problems, according to the school of government. It has some unintended consequences, probably. We don't know exactly what it affects or what it'll do, so, aside from the general effect of it, but, yeah, I'll be glad to make the motion to support the
Let's be clear,
resolution.
the state stopped us from being able to tell people that they can't build big developments in the town of Waynesville in certain areas. That's what it is.
So I move that we adopt the resolution.
Okay, we've got a motion
Second.
Second by Julia. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, show like sign. Okay, thank you so much, Elizabeth. Good to see you.
Hopefully.
That Meyer. Moving on to, we've got an approval of an engineering firm to design repairs to Walnut Trail Bridge at the sewer plant. And Rob, will you bring us up to par on that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you remember, about 3 years ago, we asked for your permission to negotiate easements and build a construction road leading from about the fairgrounds to the sewer plant because Harper Construction Company needed to bring in a 70-ton crane, and the bridge wouldn't handle that load. The bridge is rated at 20 tons or 40,000 pounds. And as we move towards the end of the sewer plant project, we have found that some of the trucks will be bringing in the chemicals, principally sodium hypochlorite, which is a safer form of chlorine than we've used for the last 40 years. It's 77,000 pounds, and the bridge weighs 20 tons or 40,000 pounds. Ricky Bourne and I drafted an RFQ and asked for qualifications proposals for firms that have experience strengthening bridges and also repairing storm damage. We had four firms apply, and we interviewed them, and KCA Construction, which is a multi-state firm, has a tremendous amount of experience with North Carolina and South Carolina DOT. They frequently strengthen bridges. They are working in Buncombe and Yancey County on DOT bridges that were damaged by Hurricane Helene. They have drove up here and inspected the bridge before they submitted their RFQ, and they understand the type of bridge and what needs to be done. Based on their experience, the fact that they are a firm that specializes only in structural engineering and particularly in bridges, we recommend this firm to you and ask that you authorize us to negotiate a contract to come back and authorize and design the strengthening. And what we'll do with the strengthening is once they come up with this design, we'll ask them to estimate the cost of the bridge. If the cost is something we can handle within the fund balance of the sewer fund, then we'll recommend to you that you move to send this out to bid and have the bridge strengthened. If the repairs are over $1 million or so, we'll probably have to look at borrowing the money. But what this firm would do if we contract with it successfully is they'll go all the way through the design and the bidding process and give us an estimated cost so that we can move from there. So we recommend KCA engineers, and ask that you authorize us to negotiate a contract with them.
The other thing that's happening here is we're right near the end of our rebuild of the sewer plant. And so at that point, we'll probably lose our right of way that we have there. So it's very, very important that we get this bridge fixed and back up to par so we'll be able to get trucks across there with heavy equipment stuff, correct, Rob?
That's correct.
Does anyone else have any further questions for Rob?
Yes, sir.
Okay, with that, we ask for that motion there to approve KC Engineers.
I'll make a motion that we approve KC Engineering.
I'll second, Mayor.
I've got a motion, John, and a second by Anthony. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, show like sign. Okay, Rob.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Rob and I talked about this company. They're a very, very outstanding company. You know, if we ever have any more bridge problems or anything like that, I would highly recommend these guys putting you to come out and take. They do have an office in Winston-Salem, I read.
That's correct. And in Charlotte, that's
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
That's right. They do a lot of work for NCDOT.
Yeah.
Specializing in bridge replacement, bridge design, and bridge strengthening.
So this will be a great thing to get this started. Okay, the next order of business is approval of a contract for schematic design for McAdams and Associates in connection with Vance Street and Dutch Fisher Ball Field. Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In our previous meeting, you authorized the staff to negotiate a contract with McAdams Associates to design improvements to Dutch Fisher and Vance Street ball fields. They are a firm that not only do civil engineering, but they also have an architectural component, which is located in Asheville. They have as you know, they have a considerable experience doing this type of work. They recommended to us that we start the project with them doing all the research they need to design the buildings, the fields. They want to do stormwater analysis to see if we can create stormwater mitigation elements to the fields that would reduce or eliminate future flooding. So you'll see in their contract that they do a lot of research and also mitigating stream banks over at Dutch Fisher where the creek is very close. So what they recommend to you is that they go through the schematic, which is the first major phase of the design work, and conduct all the research and do the schematic design to determine what the town wants with relation to the type of field, the type of dugout, type of restroom facility. The less complex, the less their fee would be for the remainder of the contract. So they said it would be much more accurate for them to negotiate the remainder of the contract after they determine the scope of work. You know, this is a little bit, as you know, I like to, to say we use the Goldilocks method. We don't want a field that's too cold or too hot. We want a field that's just right. And for them to contract right now, they wouldn't be able to hit that mark. So what you have here is a contract for the schematic phase of the two fields. Because we have to treat the fields as separate projects under FEMA, you'll see that they're separate contracts. So you'll find that the Dutch Fisher field is $130,000. That's because of the amount of work they need to do to mitigate the stream and how the characteristics of flooding the field and how they can create stormwater methods that protect the field in the future. Vance Street has less of that, and it also the bathroom facility was recoverable, so we won't be designing a bathroom facility for Vance Street, and that's the reason it's lower. Should you approve these contracts tonight, they're ready to get started with the field work. I think anybody that's been around the rec center has noticed that the survey work for the dog park and that area is already going on with CDC. So we're anxious to get this work done and try to get these fields built and back into the public service.
Actually seen those guys down at the dog park area.
That's right.
Surveying, so.
That's right. They're doing a topographic survey.
So hopefully we'll be reimbursed from FEMA for the ballparks.
Yes, again, want to emphasize that especially with the change of administration, this is somewhat of a moving target. We will probably be compensated for the replacement of the field. Then there's a second step, which is called mitigation. And they emphasize very strongly that they want us to rebuild our facilities such that they become as storm-proof as possible. But they don't, at the same time, they don't guarantee the mitigation. So we're doing everything we can to follow FEMA guidelines, which is to
which may or may not change.
that's correct. So we're again doing everything we can to follow their guidelines as they change almost weekly.
You guys have questions for Rob? All right, you need to
I'll make a
motion.
motion to approve McAdams proposed Bank Street contract for the lump sum of $92,220 and Dutch Fisher Ballpark for the lump sum price of $130,000.
Second.
Got a second with John. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, your like sign. Bruce, make sure they do Dutch Fisher bill first, so my granddaughter will get on top of it. I'm just aggravating. No, I ain't. Oh,
Even the call,
Lord.
Nick.
You gotta bring a little bit of,
Okay, good.
you gotta bring a little bit of comedy to it. It ain't funny.
I'm afraid not.
No, not, you gotta spend money like that. But we move on to, communication from staff. Town manager Rob, you have anything for us tonight?
Just a gentle reminder that we have a retreat a week from this Friday. And as always, we like to do research work for board members, council members that want to bring issues to the retreat. We'd love to get your list as soon as we possibly can so that we can add it to our agenda and time it. You don't have to tell me right now, but if you whisper, send me an email, text me, whatever, we'll begin to work on any research that you need, or we'll simply put an item on the agenda. Chuck, I was wondering if you or any members of the ESP committee would like to make a report on, you're doing a lot of work, and I didn't know whether you'd like to make a report to the retreat.
I might like to. We've talked about that. I'll let you.
Okay, I'll put it on the agenda in case. Okay, all right. Thank you,
Ms.
Mayor.
Town attorney?
I have nothing.
Okay, we'll go on to communication from our board members. Esther, you want to probably give us a little bit of what happened in Raleigh while you were there?
I was at the state dinner with the representatives. I had an amazing evening with our senator. Unfortunately, Mr. Pless was not in attendance at the state dinner. But I was able to speak with all of our other representatives, including Mike Clinton. I will share photos with the press of everyone that was there. It was nice to hear from our new Speaker of the House. They had a very cordial roundtable on certain issues, the minority and the majority. So I'm very hopeful that things will start being done in North Carolina.
Good.
That's that update. I would like to make one little statement for the press since they're here. I want to address the recent article in the Mountaineer regarding the proposed dog park where they stated that it would be over $1 million. While the engineer's estimate of over $1 million for construction costs represents a worst case scenario, I want to assure the community that I will only support good, sound financial decision. It is crucial that we prioritize responsible spending and ensure that any project we undertake is both physically prudent and beneficial to our town. I remain committed to making decisions that reflect the best interests of Waynesville and its residents. Because there's a rumor out there that we're going to spend $1 million on the dog park and the artificial turf. which is not true.
That ain't happening.
That is not going to happen. Just so we put that out there clearly and soundly.
That ain't happening.
That's a
on
giant
our-
no.
Right.
On our watch. Let's
On
put
our
it
watch, it will not
that way.
happen.
On our watch. Well, thank you for going down and representing,
Absolutely.
our town board.
And Interstate 40 did reopen through the gorge. If you've driven it,
It's a nail
have
biter.
you, imagine, it is a nail biter. I will tell you, I went through
It is
before the
as well.
barricades were up and we were going about 90 miles an hour with the highway patrol, and I have never prayed more in my life. It's very scary even at 30 miles an hour.
Yes.
Well,
Please be careful and observe all speed limits.
What's the backup? Did you tell? Or have you heard what the daily backup is?
No, but I will be getting those statistics.
Excuse me?
Just because the lanes are so tight.
Right.
Traffic is back.
Yeah,
Right. I will tell you that, they're encouraging people, do not use that route unless you have to. And please observe the speed limit. And please observe the speed limit in our construction site where we're installing the new bridge at Lake Junaluska. Please, I would love to sit with you and talk to you about, please do the speed limit through that area. It's very dangerous for people, especially construction workers. Even if you can't see them, does not mean that the construction workers are not there. And people go 90 miles an hour there.
Well, you're our connection with all the highway stuff, but what I've heard is this is not gonna be an easy fix. We're talking years.
Yeah.
We're
And,
talking
and we're talking,
years.
they're bringing up the possibility now to, on those low line areas where the whole bank is, they can't push against the big bank. And then you've got the river down here, and so they're looking at doing bridges
Correct.
in certain areas.
Causeways, there
And
is,
trying to do bridges to make that connection through there.
Wow.
Yeah, we have nowhere, there's nowhere to go.
there's nowhere to go. And if you know the whole history of that area of why it was placed next to the river, that creates even more compounds. There's even talk of rerouting the whole interstate. We're not talking $1 billion. We're talking at least $2 billion.
Yeah.
They could reroute it through Waynesville.
That is perfect. Yes.
Yeah.
There's every,
When
and
you
they
get
will
some
tell you
EV
that
charging.
every option is on the table. Every option. is on the table. It's gonna be years.
Anyone else representative from Hayward County?
Yes, there were representatives from Maggie Valley that were there,
Yeah.
which were very, Mike Evelyn and
And John,
Heights.
yeah.
John
Hamm.
was there.
John Hamm.
Yeah, nice representation. What was good for me is that the vice chair of the MPO was also there. She's from Hendersonville. So we got to tag team a lot of the, representatives. She would ask for $1 million. I would ask for $2 million. So, or vice versa. And we kind of tag teamed them and put them on the spot. So hopefully we'll be having a lot more money. That's fine.
Okay, again, thank you for representing her.
That's a long trip for dinner.
It is. It is a very, very long trip.
We did propose that moving forward that we combine our resources and take a van down to legislative at least once a month. And go around to all the representatives in their offices through their office hours. Because this middle of the state, they do that all the time and they get heard. But it's nice to get to talk to other representatives that aren't just from this area. You can talk to any of the representatives. So my goal is that we start going down at least once a month.
Okay, John, you have anything, Mike? Sure.
Well, now that we've brought in our fellow municipality in Maggie, I just want to say that it's disheartening to see what's going and the attacks that are relentless against them. That being one of them being the reduction in the TDA taxes and eliminating that, which I think is just beyond destructive and so will really hurt that municipality out there. And then the piggyback on it is this the annexation component. And what I will tell all of us sitting here as the town of Waynesville, we may not be first as Maggie is, but we could be next. And so we really have got to be vigilant and on top of this to make sure that these things, we're not, our governing is not taken away from us as elected officials.
Yeah, because you never know what he slips under the table.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very.
You know, Julia, you're exactly right. But I would clarify. They're taking away our ability the ability to govern from the people of this community. And that's what's really unfortunate.
Disheartening. It is very, very true. But, okay. I don't have really anything. I did get an email from, what is the school? Shining Rock. Shining Rock has asked if, and I'm looking at retirees. Do we have any retirees on the board? They're asking that maybe at some period of time that an elected official from the town could come and read to maybe some kindergartners or something like that.
I
So
could
would
volunteer for that
any of
as
you
well.
guys be interested?
I would be
in that?
interested in that as well. I don't,
I am retired, but I'm not, oh no,
you're not good with reading.
I'm not good.
If you do, just let me know. Just let me know and, you know, and I can set you up with that lady that I got the email from. That's the only thing that I have there on the link there that I can remember. Other than that, I'll entertain a motion that we adjourn.
So moved, Mayor.
Motion, Anthony,
Second.
second, Scott, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, show like sign. So order. Thank you all for your hard